If you want to learn, you have to first listen.
Welcome to episode 5 of Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know, a podcast to feed our curious mind. I'm Matt O'Donnell, and I want to know who you are, I want to know what you do, I want to know why Ringo Starr is dyeing his hair. Ringo's the best drummer ever in the greatest band ever, but man, we know you're 83. Like, it's okay. I want to know what matters to you and why. I've spent the past 15 years as a professional bass player. That means I've covered a lot of miles and talked with a lot of people. I have found that the person deeply interested in a topic is often more interesting than the topic itself, and the bigger picture is found in the details. That makes for a fantastic excuse to share conversations with people I think are great. Today on the podcast, we have photographer extraordinaire Robby Klein. I've given a lot of thought to how milestones work with this podcast thing, right? Obviously, someday, hopefully, there will be 50 episodes of Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know. There'll be 100 episodes. There'll be a lot worth celebrating. However, I think in the beginning, there's a lot of merit in celebrating things like getting to 5 episodes. 5 episodes that are released in a consistent manner and on time every time is a real accomplishment. So I think that 5 is a big deal. I think 10 is going to be a big deal. And then eventually we're going to get to 25, which is going to be right around that year mark. And that'll be awesome for both of those reasons. And so I thought that episode 5 was worth making special by having my already most requested guest to date. It's funny because as you'll hear, this chat starts out with me saying that it's interesting for me to have sat down with professional Robby. That's because our relationship is truly rooted in Robby being one of my wife Amanda's oldest friends, dating back to when they were kids in Louisiana. So while I'm happy to be out there bragging about like how cool of a friend I have for his professional world, all of our time spent together is, quality stuff away from the work grind that we both do around the Nashville industry. But definitely make no mistake, Robby's work is among the best in the game. His photos have been featured in People magazine, Billboard magazine, Garden and Gun. He's done stuff for the Country Music Association, CMT. And as you'll hear us talk about, in 2020, he got to be the photo booth photographer for the winners of the Grammy Awards, which was the year that Billie Eilish really cleaned up. By the way, for the nature of what this episode is like, if you go to the Instagram page for this show, which is at Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know, and find the cover art for this episode, if you swipe through there, we talk about a bunch of specific photos, and I've tried to include as many of them as I could so that you can kind of like follow along with certain things that you'll see. Just definitely go to that Instagram page and you'll see what happens. Anyway, enjoy this very thoughtful and insightful chat with my pal Robby Klein. I don't know. This will be interesting because I don't normally think of you as a photographer, like in real life.
Yeah.
So like having to try and do like the bulk of this interfacing with like professional Robby was like a new and different experience for me.
Well, I think that goes both ways.
Sure.
Where it's like, all right, I gotta PG this, PG-13 it. We'll go with that.
Although it is interesting because like you and I sort of interface the Nashville music industry. If you see like just that as a general hub, and like you and I generally operate on like different spokes of it, but into like the same things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like, given our personal relationship, I have like generally no reason to like go above and beyond to think about you in like a professional capacity, you know?
Well, hopefully that all makes it interesting. All right.
No, I think so.
We'll see.
I think
either that or people can be like, yeah, that was boring.
So far, I haven't gotten like super like linear with these. Honestly, like the linear stuff is the stuff I don't know. Meaning, if I like go back to the beginning of Robby, like those are the things that I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So, what is like the first like general thrust of you being into photography?
Well, I guess going back, I guess I'd have to say that art has always been like a part of my life. My mom was an artist, a couple artists in the family, and I got that gene. And so even as a kid, you know, my mom was doing art classes in our garage, and over the summer she'd do like different summer camp type things. And so I was kind of thrown into it from the beginning, and did it in school, was in a lot of different like talented art programs, did a lot of like different summer things. And so I grew up drawing, painting, sculpting, things like that. And then in 7th grade, got my hands on a camera and started playing with it. It was it was about as early as it gets as far as digital cameras. It was actually connected to an MP3 player. And now it kind of boggles my mind thinking back on that time, because my mom was very techie. She still is. She likes all kinds of weird little tech things. Yeah. And so she had found that, and then I found it, and it probably was like a 1/4 megapixel. It was nothing. And I could never figure out how to get the images off of it. I just like taking the picture, seeing it, and then I delete it and then take another one. Like it probably could store like 10 pictures on it.
Yeah.
But it was just the creative side of me was like, oh, this is fun. Like I'm used to, up until that point, I never really taken any pictures. This would be like 2005, 4, somewhere in there, you know, so no one has an iPhone. There's no digital cameras really. Like they're out for sure. But like it's not in the hands of the general public yet. It's more a professional thing.
Yeah, I don't think I had a decent like, you know, pocket grade digital camera until probably 2007, 2008. But I will say what's funny that you mentioned the MP3 player with the camera in it is I had, for a brief minute there, they made an iPod Nano that had a video camera in it.
Yeah.
In like 2009 or something like that. I shot an entire like in studio like recording session that ended up like being made into like a, you know, a really low rent music video. And I was just thinking about that the other day, that I was like, I shot this entire thing on an iPod Nano. That's wild. But like,
well, that's kind of the funny thing. Like I think about the Nano or some of those earlier Apple products as almost being like pioneers for that, right? Whoa, you're putting a camera in this.
Yeah.
And then this beat that by years. And I was thinking, like, what the heck was that thing? I have no clue what brand it was. Like, it was just something random I found in my house. And so, yeah, like, I fell in love with being able to just take a picture and then the finished product is created there, right? Like, up until then, you know, my parents were really into, like, yard sales. And so on Saturdays, we get up early, go to garage sales, as you know, from South Louisiana. So we'd go to Baton Rouge or wherever. And I would just sit in the back of the car with a sketch pad and I would just draw. So I might work on something for a couple of days or, you know, several hours. And so as a kid, the idea of just like taking it and then especially digitally just seeing it, I was like, this is tight.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
It just drew me in on a very like basic level. And then I'd say some months later, Walgreens had this camera, and it was basically a disposable camera that if you brought it back to Walgreens to get the film developed, they would put a new roll in it for free.
Oh.
And so I did that for probably another year, where it was just endless free film, which is an amazing deal to think about now. I mean, that's like the hippest, sickest thing you could do right now. It's like, here's a disposable camera. We'll give you free film as long as you develop it with us.
Yeah.
Insane.
I mean, at that time, they're trying to give film away.
Yeah. Dude, so
stockpiles of film and everyone's like, well, digital.
Yeah. And so it was a great little thing they had going on there for a while. Lord knows how many rolls of free film I got out of that. And then sometime after that, I think for Christmas, my parents got me a Canon digital ELPH. So that was my first digital camera, just a real small pocket camera, point and shoot. and I became like that weird kid at school that had the camera. You know,
Yeah,
at
you
that
were just-
time, nobody had a camera.
Yeah, so you were the shutterbug.
Yep. I was the weirdo that was just taking pictures in the hallways and taking pictures at things. And yeah, it was kind of a novelty, I guess.
Nothing about that has changed.
Yeah, pretty
You are
much.
still,
Yeah.
You are still exactly that person.
Yeah.
Just with,
the
vastly
cameras
superior
got better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's kind of the start of it. It was just a love for creating and found a new medium to do it.
That's cool. Trying to think, like, that makes so much sense because, like, this is where I will start mixing it up, like timeline, making the multiverse of how this works out. But like, for you to say that, like, so much of the beginning of like you just like taking pictures on that camera was something that you were doing like in hallways and stuff like that or whatever. I don't think of you as being a person that takes a lot of like still life photography.
Mm-hmm.
Like that everything that I generally, and maybe it's only like would you say that's accurate?
It is now.
Yeah.
At the time, I was shooting everything. Some of my first prints I ever made that hung anywhere publicly were of these purple flowers. I forget what kind of flowers they were, but I lit them with like a lamp. And I just thought, I was like, oh, this is so cool. And those old cameras, like probably the coolest thing they could do, which is so kind of, I don't know, almost tacky now, is like, it's black and white except for the greens, or the reds.
Yeah.
And so I was playing around with that like crazy, and it's always made skin tones rough.
Yeah.
And so back then it was anything and everything. It was much less portraiture. I had so many at the time. I didn't have really anyone else to take pictures of.
Sure.
And I also things didn't all click at the same time. It was very kind of staggered as far as like realizing like, oh, I could photograph someone else. And so for a long time, I'd go to the park. I'd go to downtown Ponchatoula after school. And dude, I would have a tripod. The amount of selfies that I have of me and you got to think, this is like right around towards the end of like MySpace, right?
Yeah.
So it was that exact thing where like I'm looking like super emo and looking down and looking like
a lot of train tracks and chain link fences involved.
That's it. So I got all kinds of weird stuff of me just in alleys hanging out because I didn't have anyone else to shoot, and it was just fun to go out after school and make some pictures like that.
I mean, that's like an interesting take on it, right? Because there's to look at the 10,000 hours theory, that like some people accomplish that in community and some people like get to develop that alone. And there's no real, I don't think either one has like something to benefit over the other. You could have just been taking pictures of your friends all the time.
Yeah.
But that like you were doing it by yourself and then like chrysalising that to like bring it outward.
Yeah. I mean,
later.
I feel like I had almost like different stages of that 10,000 hours, right? Where it was just, I probably put in 10,000 hours of just shooting weird selfies of myself. Oh,
sure.
Dude. And once I figured out about long exposure and like I got a speed light, dude, that's whenever it like changed, because then my nights opened up. So I would always just shoot during the day. And then all of a sudden I realized, whoa, like this speed light, I could put this thing on a tripod, put 10 seconds on it, and then go like write stuff with flashlights or, move all over the place. One of the picture that pops into mind is at this park in town that I basically had a speed light in my hand. For those of you that don't know, speed light, just the on-camera flash, so I could hold it in my hand because it's that small. And I would all over this play place, and I would go down the slide, and I would go, and I kept popping the flash on myself. And so at the end of it, it would be a play place with 20 of my heads, all around it. Just weird stuff like that I start doing at night now, because we lived a couple blocks from this park. And so then I started going out at night and playing around with that. So it was all kinds of stages to it.
It's crazy. So when is like the first time that you remember somebody like looking at your photography and thinking that it was good?
As far as just thinking it was good, it was probably at school, talented art classes. As far as someone in a higher position, like I may have had friends saying things,
sure, yeah.
But
no, someone that was like, I'm thinking more in terms of like someone that was like, it was worth encouraging you.
Yes. I had a talented art teacher, Miss Kitty, and she basically, whenever I would come to talented art class, which is once a week, she just let me print a ton. I would print things that I shot that week. I'd print. And so there was a lot of, positive affirmation there, for sure. And then I would take a lot of those prints and I'd go to my art teacher. just in school that I'd see every day, Miss Zab, and I'd show her the prints, you know. So she would let me come bug her during her lunch hour, and I'd show her those prints and we'd talk about them. And so I think those two teachers certainly were early on some of the adults that were saying, hey, like there's something here. And yeah, very grateful for them. And that certainly led to, you know, them connecting me with other people that could help me figure out how to develop this thing.
Yeah. Were there other photographers around that were helpful?
So it wasn't until, I think, as far as really getting help from another photographer, Zab had me come to, she had a secondary building that she had once she left school called the Art Center, and a photographer in Hammond, Johnny Chauvin, was doing a talk there. And so I went and met him. I had a cardboard box full of like 4x6s and stuff like that I had taken, and Zab introduced us, and he said, hey, why don't you come? I don't know if we were second shooting. I don't think we were second shooting weddings first. I think really it was come by the studio. I went by the studio and I started editing for him. So he was one of the top photographers in town, and so he had a lot of work. And so I would basically get the images from him after a shoot, whether that be seniors, weddings, bridals, things like that, and I take out all the bad ones, right? Where's someone's blinking, or it's obvious that he didn't mean for this motion.
The real
stuff
grunt
like
work of like
it was grunt work, man. It was a lot, and it was tough because my brain, my ADHD dude, trying to sit there, like I enjoyed it, but sitting there for so long, like even with my pictures, that's the worst part.
I'd imagine. Yeah,
it was excruciating. And that's why, I mean, that's one of the big reasons, you know, early on after that, jumping ahead a little bit, but, you know, I started shooting my own weddings in high school and college.
How many times have you been married?
And so I would hate it. Every time I had to do my weddings that I shot, I was like, this is awful. I need one of me. That's what I need. I need to hire a me the way Johnny hired me to get it off his plate.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like, that part is for sure a thing. Like, every time that you kind of like level up and you think about like grunty stuff that like you did for the people who were like 20 levels ahead of you, and then realize like, no, I need that help now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how, I mean, all kinds of stuff is that. I mean, music is that way, especially now with like vocal tuning. It's like, if you can outsource that to somebody, that is like the best. Something like that. It's like, it's in tune or it's not, but it's a process.
Yeah.
It's like getting through all that is such a ridiculous pain. So like, what age were you when you started like doing your own weddings and stuff like that? Like, was that like your first like professional work that way?
The first job, I think, my first payment rather, I believe came from a friend of mine, Alexis Marceau. She was a senior at the high school that I went to, and she asked if I'd do her senior pictures. And this kind of happened a couple times throughout my career, which is, she says that, and it never crossed my mind. Sure. It had never crossed my mind at the time, like, oh, literally the idea of taking senior pictures, but also I think that was the first time it hit me that people make money doing this.
Yeah.
Right? It had been at least 3 years that I'd been taking pictures, but it had purely just been just a fun thing that I was doing. Yeah. Never crossed my mind people made money from it. And I think this was probably before Johnny as well. And so she just approached me at school one day, hey, would you be up for doing this? You know, I'll give you $200 or something like that. And I was like, what? Like,
$200? Especially that as like a first thing. It's like,
freshman, sophomore in high school.
Yeah, it wasn't someone that was like looking to slide you like $50. Like,
yeah.
That's real money.
Yeah, I was like, heck yeah, let's do this. And so I think sometime after that, you know, a friend that was in a band asked the same question. Hey, I got a band. You know, we'd love some pictures. And the light bulb went off again. Oh, holy crap. You know, bands need pictures.
Yep.
And so it was a very slow, I don't know if I just wasn't bright back then and couldn't connect all the dots very quickly, but it kind of took people saying those things and going and requesting those things for me to go, oh, wow, you know, people do this.
I don't know if that's like where that falls in like the altruism scale of what is better and what isn't. Mm-hmm. I'm notoriously bad for lowballing on things like that, just because I'm like, yeah, sure, great. You know, like whatever. I mean, it's the same thing with like the way this podcast is going. It's like, it's an entirely in-house production outside of a few upfront costs, branding the thing for audio and stuff. It's like I'm not necessarily like gunning through this so far to, you know, like have sponsors and make a bunch of money and stuff. Like it's more about the idea of doing it because like it's something that I enjoy doing. And then I'm sure there will come some point where someone will, or I mean, hopefully there would come a point where like there'd be an offer or something like that. Like, Yeah, that actually does sound great. Like, and it sounds kind of the same way. Like, there is something nice about that. Like, you were just doing it for like love of the game.
Yeah.
And then weren't thinking all about money, but there are all these avenues by which like you could be making money from that.
Yeah. And I think, I think particularly with art, it can be more difficult to see a monetary value to it at a young age. Like now we're adults-ish and we have bills and we have things and it's like, okay, like things need to make money. But certainly when you're younger and you're doing the creative thing that you love doing, it's your mind you're not worried about money.
It's true. I guess the part I had left out in that last little bit was that thinking about the kind of people that do get into things for money. Mm-hmm. To use podcasting again, I feel like anyone that I ever hear say, well, like there's like big money in podcasting. It's like, I'm going to get into it and like, we're immediately going to like launch into this thing. You normally don't hear too many episodes from people like that, and also like there's just an immediate kind of grime on people like that, like a hustler vibe. And that just doesn't create the same level of like satisfaction of end result. Yeah. I think. And so even if like ultimately, for instance, like I wish from a musician standpoint, I could say the same thing about myself that I would say about you that like never dawned on like you to make any money. Whereas it's like, I grew up thinking musicians can make money, but also having love for it in such a way that was just like respecting the path as well.
Well, how many, I have bad recall, so I'm not going to be able to pull any of these names out of my head, but how many bands or artists have spent 3 or 4 years working on this record? It comes out, it's their first record. It's amazing. They get signed, and now they have to crank something out in the next year and a half while touring.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Right?
Like, there's that phrase that's like, you get your entire lifetime to make your first record. You get 9 months to make your second.
Exactly. Exactly. So when something's done, and even though those artists might have the best intentions, the labels now need to make money, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Making something for money versus making something just for the love of making it, there's different pressures there. I think you choose things differently based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like moving from there, like when did you get the first like inkling that you wanted to actually do photography professionally?
I think it came on pretty early. It was still some time before I really realized the careers that were out there. I remember the day, some of my heroes would be like Annie Leibovitz, Mark Seliger, and those two in particular, I found I wasn't the best student, and I was ignoring my work on the computer one day in school, and I was surfing the web, and I found Annie and Mark on the same day. And for those that know Annie and Mark, it was a big day.
Yeah.
And my mind was blown, and I was like, and what really stood out to me was, for people that are familiar with their work, Annie toured with the Rolling Stones early on. And so you had this incredible body of work just there.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that and being like, man, this is still cool. Like right away, I was like, this was shot decades ago and this is still amazing. And then Mark, he was the Rolling Stone photographer, and so was Annie, for a long time in the early 90s. And so his body of work through that with like Kurt Cobain and just, amazing iconic images, what really kept sticking out to me was like, man, these people are creating work that doesn't have a shelf life.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was in high school being able to see this, and I was like, I want to create stuff that is cool forever. I don't want to create something that's just cool for the moment or, only works for the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after finding that work, I was starting to realize, wow, there is more to this thing than what I'm seeing in front of me. That it's not just weddings and seniors and things like that, but there's this whole other side of it, and which is what we consider the commercial world of it, and in particular editorial, which would be for magazines and now online features, and even social could be editorial. Yeah, that's what really started kind of giving me that itch, and then. The one job I ever had that I could say is like a real job, I senior year of high school, I worked in the Walgreens photo lab for a semester. And I remember my first 10-hour day, and I sound like such a weenie, but man, I thought I was going to lose my mind in that place. And that day, I'll never forget that day, because I was like, I am not cut out for like staying in a mundane place for 10 hours a day. Like, I was like, the freelance life is for me. I feel like I swear that semester is what what really changed that, where I was like, art it is.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. Even for a little while here, I always brag a little bit that the only like non-music related job I've ever had is ski instructing. And that is true, but that doesn't mean that I didn't do a few things that were like kind of office-y for a little bit. And I remember there was one job I did for a few months, and being in that office every day like made me lose my will to live.
Exactly.
And I actually, Amanda gives me such a hard time for this idea, mostly because she thinks of what our children will grow up to be like, because they'll be my children. But I would do zero work in the office, and I was using my own laptop. And so I would, I found an app, because the way they were tracking my work was by the amount of folders that had been timestamped that I was editing them. I found an app to edit the file attributes so that I could make it appear as though I had worked on them. And then I would go home and sit in front of my TV and do all the work that I was supposed to have done while I was in the office. And like, I was just looking up like D'Angelo videos and shit like that, like while I was at work, because it was more of a thing of being like, I couldn't mentally process it at that time of day. I mean, you know me, that just wasn't for me. Like the idea of like having to be there for 8:30 for like a morning meeting, and then like we start working at 9, and it was like most of the day was just totally unproductive for me.
Oh, I get it.
I could just be home and be like, okay.
If I need to get in touch with you at 9 a.m., I know it's probably not going to happen. If I need to get in touch with you at 3 a.m., it's a good chance I can get there.
Yeah, halfway decent chance. That's right. You brought up something interesting, which was looking at like Seliger's stuff and how a lot of that you thought of as timeless. And this is probably some of just my perception versus like the actual reality of it. But I think of so much like editorial work or like editorial things as being at least hired to be current or like temporal in terms of being like, okay, we need shoots for this album, or we're, you know, going through like this fashion season, these things. How do you think that the things that become timeless happen that way?
I think that there are a couple things that can make an image more iconic, more timeless. Lighting is certainly one of them, because even since I've been shooting, there's been different fads. And I can look at like 2008 and see what was really popular at that time. And then there were just different phases with photography where lighting, people fell in love with certain lighting concepts and those kind of stuck, but then they faded out. And so it's easy to look back and go like, oh, that's so 2008, right? Okay. You can kind of place the time and you know that it's kind of like out of date based on the lighting. And so I think that's one important aspect of it, where you can have, you know, things lit any which way that might, you know, be timeless to some extent. But in my opinion, I think that the lighting can dictate that pretty easily, because there's just ways to light things where if you're looking at the picture, what you don't want to think about is the light, right? If you're looking at an iconic image, you're probably not going like thinking of that light and thinking of like a time frame. Where I think that, you know, some of those high key, high pass 2008 images, you see that and you just think of that time period in photography. So I think that that's one thing, but also, you know, some of the examples I kind of give often as far as being here in Nashville, where we are and where I work the most, and is the difference between working with an artist for, let's say, a record label and, let's say, Billboard magazine. The record label is kind of going back to the idea of kind of having to sell something, right? Where we are selling something with the magazine too. You know, the cover needs to attract, and, you know, there are certain things that go into that. But oftentimes with the record labels, I say especially now, it's an interesting time, because with streaming, you know, now on set we need to get something for Apple Music, we need to get something for Amazon Music, we need to get something for this. Yeah. And a lot of times, you know, we have different parameters for each of those companies, and it's simple stuff. Okay, we just need on white, we need eye contact. There's not like a big creative push because they need it to be these things. Yeah, sure. And so the amount of times it's just been like, okay, like, what are we going to do? Let's do something. We just need it on like a white backdrop, and, you know, that'll be good. Like, okay. And it needs to sell that person, right? And oftentimes, like, the larger the artist, it can kind of be more regulated.
Yeah.
Where editorial, the way I like to think about it is, if I'm going to shoot this person for a magazine, we can be a lot looser with this thing, right? Like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but there's just certain things where, or Eric Church is a good one, right? We all love Eric Church, and I've been thankful to have been working for him for several years now. The last Billboard magazine cover I did with him was around pandemic time, and I got to photograph him in my studio actually getting vaccinated. And so it was kind of he was earlier on with it, so it was kind of a really cool thing to be able to do. And it's one of those things like that never would have come up in a conversation with a record label, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like, that's just too off the wall. We're not going to do a record where he has a needle in his arm, right? Yeah. Exactly. And so with editorial, you can kind of think a little bit outside the box and get a little bit more interesting with it. And also you can add more lifestyle details into those shoots, and they make a little bit more sense. People might debate me on that. I think that editorial style, I love doing that type of work for record labels and for records and artists. Yeah. But I feel like there's just always something a little bit looser with magazines where it's like, hey, let's try to get something that hasn't been done before. And I feel like that's kind of the important part, where you can make something a bit more unique leaning into that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about you saying for things like Amazon and Apple Music and stuff yet, but like, it makes sense that they would want to get all those things in at the same time as, other stuff, potentially like a cover or whatever, but that all of those companies' images are branded very well. And so they have to fit that way. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's naive of me to have thought like, oh yeah, I guess like the, Apple Music sessions, thing is just like some, background removed photo that like is added in. But
well, I was just having a conversation even, I think yesterday, about the idea that, as a commercial photographer, we're often involved in the creative process through a lot of these shoots, and sometimes coming up with the creative fully. But at the end of the day, you're creating something for someone else. And editorial is something where you really, I feel like it's the most flexible as far as like, no, what do you want? Because one, a lot of photographers might understand, ownership of images, and editorial. One of the great things about editorial is that you own the images that you photograph. So you can really kind of think it more personally, like, what do I want? This is the thing that I'm going to own. I can license out for the rest of my life. What do I want of this person? It's hard with commercial work, especially when there's buyouts involved, which means that they are paying you to own the copyright. You can't do those same things with those images. You can't license them. You can't just do anything you want. You can't post certain ones if it's not approved. And so I can go, oh, I really want this picture. But if they own the copyright and they go, you know what, we don't want that one out there, you can't put it out there. Yeah, sure. And so that's where editorial feels a little bit more personal, and you can kind of dig in a little bit more about, what do I want out of this?
That makes a whole lot of sense. So when did you think about starting to move to Nashville?
So my wife and I, we've been together forever. Those who don't know, we started dating summer after 7th grade, and then the rest is history. So in college, we were sophomores, we got married. And at that point, I had been driving up to Nashville and photographing, nothing big at all, but just small musicians here and there. And I could just tell that there was a scene here, right? Yeah. There was an industry here, where in the New Orleans area, at the time, the movie industry, the Hollywood South thing was kind of popping off, but being that young in my career, I hadn't done anything with TV yet. I hadn't shot any TV or movie posters. And so that felt very far away. That felt very untangible. So as I was working in Nashville, I could see like, okay, I feel like there are photographers here that I know that are making careers out of this thing. So we decided our junior year of college, we said, hey, let's put this thing on pause. It was November, December. JD came up to Nashville with me, and we were like, on the way back, we were like, you know what? We both were feeling it. We're like, we're going to do this thing. So we found a 3-month lease that was furnished, and we said, we're just going to pack whatever we can fit in our cars, and we're going to come up here for 3 months. And if we don't like it, we'll go back home and jump back in school and do that thing. Yeah. And as crazy of a 3 months as that was, we fell in love with the city, and we were like, you know what? work was enough to encourage me. There wasn't, it was a slow build, but I could see the fruits of my labor paying off. I could see, connections happening and doors opening, and it was enough to make me go, okay, let's see how this thing goes. So we stuck around for a bit, and then we ended up sticking around for a long time.
Yeah, for quite some time. I mean, you talking about the Hollywood thing and stuff like that, and Nashville like feeling different, and you having a different like perspective on that. I think about, if you watch a lot of documentaries about like musicians and things, there's always like a friend photographer. That's like one of the people that are like for profile pieces. There's one, thinking of the documentary that was made about John Lennon. It basically covers his entire career post Beatles, but it's called Lennon NYC, and it mostly focuses on like from when he moved to New York. And there's like 2 or 3 people that are photographers in it, like, and they just were friends of John and Yoko's, and how that kind of thing seems to happen a lot, where like photographers just kind of like get into like a friend zone and then sort of like have access in a way that like people don't. And I think of that, and also Nashville as being a very like social and community based thing in a way that, enables and provides work. And you are a very social person in a way that I could never dare to dream to be. And so like, do you think that was very helpful for you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
I'll now use my like background knowledge of knowing that like of Amanda talking about like when she first moved here, that like you were always just like out at stuff.
Yes, I was a bit of a social butterfly.
Yeah.
I was always going to something. You invite me, I'm showing up.
Yeah.
And part of that was a bit of networking, and part of that was just my personality. Like I really enjoy people. I enjoy social gatherings, and I just, close relationships, close friendships are important to me, and something that I continue to kind of fight for and that I need in my life.
Yeah.
And so it came pretty easy to do those types of things. And I think that, what was really fun was early on, and still to this day, there are friendships like my buddy Tyler Bryant, right? For those of you who don't know, Tyler is an incredible guitar player in a rock and roll band called Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown. And I met Tyler probably within 2 years of moving here. And he's kind of one of a couple people that I've just ended up photographing probably a couple times a year, every year since then. And those are pretty special to me, because I feel like, you'll hear some photographers be like, oh, my muse, and things like that, where I don't know if I've ever. My wife was definitely my muse in high school. I have a million. The amount of random concepts I've had her in wedding dresses and cemeteries and all kinds of stuff. But then the What Not to Do When You're Pregnant series is, I put her in every scenario you could possibly imagine, and more. And so, having folks like that where I can kind of dig in, and you see this body of work forming, very naturally. It's nothing. That type of relationship is nothing that I would ever force, because I don't think it would work that way. Like, I would never go seeking out someone and be like, you're like my person for the next 10 years.
Yeah, right.
It just has to kind of fall into place. And Tyler's one of a couple that, man, I love the pictures that we create. I absolutely love it. And part of that is just the time that we spent together. There's a comfortability there. And so, we were talking just last week over at his house, and I'm like, bro, like, I want to get you guys on some mini bikes, like just throwing out like crazy ideas that are just in my head, and they're like, let's do this. So, those are so fun, because it's images that have a place, they'll be able to use those, but it's stuff that is just coming kind of naturally out of me. Like
for sure.
I think creatively, I'm constantly thinking of concepts and ideas. And when I have certain people like that in my life that like, I can kind of think about, I'm listening to the music, and then all of a sudden I'm going like, oh, like I can both think of an idea and execute an idea, because I can call them up and be like, bro, I got this crazy idea.
That's what I'm about to ask. Like, are you, like, how often with someone like that are you initiating, like a shoot?
I'd say it goes back and forth, prior to having kids, it happened a lot more where I would be the one just being like, yo, let's go to the studio and be there till 2 or 3 a.m. and just go bananas. And I'm a total studio rat, man. I used to be there all day, all night. I could just keep shooting. And then you have kids and you're like, okay, maybe I can't, I shouldn't be at the studio till 3 a.m. every day shooting some random stuff.
Yeah.
And so it balances out a little bit. And so it's less of me bugging people every week to come shoot stuff. And it becomes a little bit more of a balance of like, I'll reach out sometimes. And then, if they have a record coming out or something, or just a random idea even, my buddy, Caleb Owens, who has his band Bones Owens, is another one where I feel like we tag team pretty good, where he'll hit me up and be like, hey, I got an idea. I'll be like, let's do it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then sometimes I'll be like, I got an idea. And he's like, all right, let's do it. I've dragged him out in the snow before. I'm like, dude, we live pretty close to each other, and it doesn't snow too often here in Nashville. And so when we got a good snow 2 years ago or so, I was like, man, like, I know you got a big truck. I know you can get out here. Like, let's go shoot some stuff in the snow. So having like cool, interesting people that are willing to do that kind of stuff with me, that's kind of some of like the lifeblood, right? Like that's what kind of keeps me going, because this whole thing started from a very personal, creative place that still needs to be fulfilled, that it still needs to be scratched,
of course,
deep down, where it's not just something that's like, okay, when someone pays me to do this, I'm gonna do this. It's like, man, I got weeks. If don't have a job this week, I'm gonna shoot something. I'm gonna drag someone to the studio. There have been weeks where I got desperate and I grabbed the mechanic across the street and like, come over to the studio, or it gets random sometimes where I just like, I need to take a picture.
I definitely understand that, and that's been so much better for me with music since like COVID happened. Because like prior to then, for probably I'd say like the 7-8 years leading up to COVID, it was all work, but none of it was necessarily all that creative. Mm-hmm. And so it was a thing that like it like removed the itch. Mm-hmm. It's like weird to like have to regenerate an itch like a lizard person, to like lose a limb and then like regrow it back out.
Yeah, dude. I mean, for me, my COVID situation was especially during lockdown. I would drive out into the country and just shoot scenes. I'd go get lost between here and Kentucky and just photograph farms, photograph whatever I saw. I couldn't be around people, and I was going crazy at home, and just as we all were during lockdown. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start driving out to these farms and these areas and just seeing what I could find. And dude, I have a million pictures from that time where it was just entertaining.
But that's so funny, because that's what I was starting to say like way earlier on in this discussion, is like, I just don't think of your work as being like landscapey or all that stuff, but or that a lot of it is, but that so much of it involves people, which I think speaks one to like a very like personable and social like aspect of you, that they're like people and things, but also from that same like the energy that comes from that there's always like, it's not that there's always movement, because of course I've seen 80 bajillion pictures of like your two boys and it's like the idea that they're always in motion, that also when you have people that you're trying to get to sit still professionally, that there's always the chance of motion and stuff.
Oftentimes when I would be out there, and still to this day, I mean, my buddy Nathan Rocky and I do drives in Louisiana where we find a new way to get from the North Shore down to the Gulf of Mexico. And so, that's just us driving around, same thing, finding stuff to shoot. And 9 times out of 10, I'm taking a picture going, what I would give to have someone in front of here. Like, it's such a cool location. Like, all I want is for a band to be here. But it still scratches an itch, and it's fun to do. I mean, I feel like for every picture that I post, there's 10,000 pictures I'm not posting, right? Like,
for sure.
There's just so much. I shoot every day. I mean, I have my camera sitting here next to me, and I fill that card up all the time. I'm pretty sure I have like 3 pictures left on that 128 gig card, just from random stuff I've been shooting over the past week. And they'll live on a hard drive, and I'll print some of them, and those will go in a box. Maybe one gets lucky and ends up in a frame. Certainly ones of my kids will end up places, but it's almost this weird second nature thing at this point. Like, we need food to keep going. Yeah. And I feel like I just need to take pictures to keep going. Like, it's just part of me at this point that I kind of go crazy. Dude, man, if I go somewhere cool and accidentally forget my Leica, oh my gosh, like it'll bug me to no end. I'll see a picture,
not having limbs,
right? Yeah, it's like, man, look at that over there. Oh gosh, of course there's a cool sunset. Of course the boys are looking super cute and we're sitting next to this great window light. It'll bug me to no end.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's only, I think, one time, I forget, we were going somewhere and you hadn't brought a camera, and it wasn't anything like particularly special, but you were like, why don't I have a camera? Like, I can't. Like, it was a real thing. So, talking about like studio ratting and stuff like that, you know, eventually you like built out the Taylor House studio here. Like, how important was that for you to be something that happened so that you could like enable that thing?
Man, that was huge. I mean, I was at a studio in Franklin prior to that, and that's where I did a lot of the studio ratting, because we had our first while we were building Taylor House, I believe, at least at some point, because his little handprint is in the concrete. So we had him when Taylor House was finished. A lot of that early stuff happened prior to the studio being built. But man alive, I mean, having a place, the amount of times that I would set up in my living room just so I could shoot something on a whim. Yeah. I'll run into someone and they're super cool looking. And so now I have a place to be like, hey, like, come to my studio. You know, I'd love to take your picture. And it was great. It's been great for work, obviously. Sure. Having a place that my clients know is there, and it's a home base. All my gear is there. It's a very comfortable space to create. And that's been a huge game changer, just I feel like mentally and within my workflow. But on a personal side of things, man, just to know if I have an idea, I have a place sitting there and ready for me. And again, all my gear's there. We got the psych wall there. So there's been plenty of days where I wake up and I just think like, man, like I'd love to take some picture, or I get inspired by something that I've seen. And so I'll start bugging people. Hey man, are you around today? Hey, what's up? Like, come take a picture. And yeah, like that's been the best. I mean, that's the dream right there, is just to have a space to create on a whim like that. Yeah, for sure. When did Taylor House open? Taylor House opened, let's see, I think this May makes 6 years. So was that 2018? Yeah, I'm trying to place it because I know the first time I had been there was for like a social gathering thing, but I was just trying to think of you saying about when of Beckett's hand, like being in the concrete there, and like, but just thinking about like, so it must have been pretty close to when like I met you that it actually opened. I say so, in that case, yeah. Another thing that Amanda thinks is very interesting about the way that you have enabled things to happen is sort of a fearlessness of putting yourself out there. And a story that I've heard a couple times, but I'd love to hear from you, is about shooting the governor of Louisiana in a non-terrorist way. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a very nice way of putting it. The way I would put it is more ignorance is bliss. Right, where it's not like an educated, I have got this, I am confident, I know that I can do this. It's more like, that'd be fun. Yeah, sure. I just run after it. And maybe it fails, maybe it doesn't. Yeah, Bobby Jindal was governor of Louisiana at the time. And I don't know why, I just seemed to like Bobby Jindal. He just was, I could care less about politics in high school, sure. But he was an interesting looking guy, and it was just one of those things where as I was trying to find my way and think of like who are interesting, maybe that was one of my first thoughts of like, oh, a higher profile person is like a governor, right? Like I didn't have access to celebrities or anything at the time. And well, as we all know, politics is just show business for ugly people. Exactly. There you go. So he was coming to speak at the town hall in Ponchatoula for something, and I honestly couldn't tell you how I made it happen. Don't remember. I do remember putting on social media somewhere about shooting the governor, and my dad calling me being like, you might want to reword that one. Because when you say it out loud, you're like, oh yeah, shooting the governor. It's like, oh no. Yeah, again, you're talking 2007 or so. I forget, somewhere in there. So, photography still wasn't like a big thing, right? And as widespread. So, just the verbiage then was a little bit more fresh and aggressive than, maybe now people are pretty used to saying, oh, I'm going to go shoot this, shoot that. But yeah, at the time it was definitely you are on a watch list now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, probably for a year or so that was an accurate thing. But yeah, I mean, I think about that story and then also like the Lance Armstrong story. Yeah, as being things of just like putting yourself out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, my buddy G, he got me cycling in high school. And this was, again, just during that time, Live Strong was huge. Everyone had the bracelets. I got my wife she loves this story, that I got married with my Live Strong bracelet on, but it was half flipped out. So it kind of, she says it ruins all the pictures in jest. But so I had been a fan of Lance. Just one of those people that I just always wanted to photograph. I just have certain people that I kind of get stuck on. I'm like, I want to do this. And so I was in Austin for a shoot and I knew that he lived there and I was able to get in touch and basically just said, hey, I'd love to take a portrait. And it ended up working out. He was just getting in from Aspen, went to his house, set up in the backyard and shot a handful of portraits and became friends from there. And it was just kind of a crazy thing where man, I'm so thankful, one, that he said yes, but it created one of my favorite portraits that I've done.
That one is really great. I mean, in fairness, and not to get into it because it's a beaten horse and not worth it, but it's like at the point at which you did that portrait, it's like, what did he have to lose? Right. By doing a portrait for someone, it was kind of a quiet period.
Yeah, I mean,
him.
And again, I'm glad he said yes. It was such a wonderful experience, and we've stayed in touch since, and we'll probably do an updated one here soon. I'm trying to ride with him, man. Lance, if you're listening, let's do this. We were working on it. One of my bougier stories, I feel like I was talking about this particular story, and someone was getting me talking about riding bikes and whatnot. And Dierks Bentley is also an avid cyclist, and there was a moment Lance was coming to town. I was photographing Dierks, and I was like, bro, Lance is coming. And I said, dude, we should all ride together. Because I'm in my head, I'm like, that would be so sick. And so it ended up falling apart towards the end there. And honestly, I it's okay that it did, because I was out of shape, and I spent that week leading up to it riding like a madman, because I was like, you know what, if this actually happens, I gotta last more than like 15 miles. I doubt I would have lasted 15 miles against them anyway. But I was like, I got to think ahead on this one, because it was going to be embarrassing.
Not to mention, if it had happened, I would wager to bet that you would have been mad that you wouldn't have been able to figure out how to shoot it.
Yeah.
I'd have participating in it and shooting it would have been a difficult row to hoe.
I not only would have been huffing and puffing, but I definitely would have had a strap to me attempting to do something with it, because it just been a cool. But that's just it. Like, again, I chase just fun experiences. Sure. I think that that's important just in life, and I think that photography has opened up so many of those opportunities for me, where it's just, man, the rooms I've been in or people that I've met, it's just cool stories, fun opportunities, fun experiences, and I think that that's probably the coolest thing that a career in photography has given me, just is the ability to meet a governor, photograph a governor, and also, Lance Armstrong, who is just historically such a, polarizing figure to many, but also, depending on what side you fall on, such an incredible athlete, and that's where I go with it, which is, man, like, no one can do what that dude did. And so to be able to photograph such a person like that in our lifetime just means so much to me,
What is that thing? Did you ever hear that thing about how Native Americans used to think that when photography first came around, that if you were photographed, that it took a piece of your soul away?
Yeah.
Do you ever think about, if that were actually true, how many people who have only been able to do what that person can do, you've stolen parts of their soul?
I'm like the bone collector. Hard drives of souls.
You should 100% do a book and call it Hard Drives of Souls.
I like it. I like it. That'll be my my 50-year look back.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes I get flack for not asking things like this. So a brief lightning round before we move into some of the latter couple questions here. What is your favorite shoot you've ever done?
Oh man.
I know that's hard. That's like ridiculous. I recently asked Molly Martin from Juniper Green like what her favorite meal ever was, and she explained it without like actually talking about the meals. So I'm curious to see how you.
Yeah, well, that's funny that you say that, because I feel like that's what happens, right? It's not always the shoot that is the thing. As far as recent memory goes, and this certainly ends up in the top 3 to 5. I had a shoot in August with Ann Wilson, and we went to Wyoming. So
not Ann Wilson from Heart.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so we went to, we were permitted to shoot in the national park there at Grand Tetons. We shot Mormon Row. It's the famous barn there. The locations were insane. And we were out this ranch a little ways down this forest road. And so it's things like that where it's like, man, this is dream situations here. And then on top of that, the timing just worked out to where one of my photo assistants, Chris Parsons, he's my fishing buddy. And we fished every day. We went fly fishing in some of the most incredible spots, because just the way our schedule worked out, we're waking up at this ranch. We have creeks and rivers all around us that are just some incredible fly fishing. So we wake up every morning and we go fly fishing, or wrap up the day fly fishing. Then we stayed an extra day and went fly fishing in the Grand Tetons and that's where I've caught my biggest trout. And it's stuff like that where it's like the shoot was great, the images are great, it's all coming out now, and I love seeing it. But man, the memories tied around that shoot, those are the ones that often stand out the most, are the ones that it's greater than just the photo shoot itself. It's just lifelong memories. My crew, they're all close friends of mine now. We're a little photo family, and so to be able to travel with them and experience things like that, that's what I'll remember more than the pictures, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think that way too about gigs, where it's like there are great gigs that are great on stage gigs, but then there's also like eating in an oyster shack, on a beach before a gig, and then being like, well, that was a great day. Yeah. The gig was great. That was cool. There was sun. There was swimming. Incredible.
Yeah.
What's the wildest shoot that you've ever done?
Oh man.
Like, what's something that got like out of control, like where you thought it was gonna get away from you? Has that ever happened?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever had a shoot that really got away from me. I've had talent that maybe they got high or something, and you start to kind of lose them at that point. But nothing ever too crazy. We keep it pretty chill and on the rails. I'd say. All right, I'm trying to think of a good one though. There's got to be something that's been.
I was about to say, I can't imagine that there hasn't been something that didn't turn out entirely different from the way you expected it.
I can't think of one.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The question I get, I feel like the most is like, oh, who's like the worst person to work with?
Yeah,
and I never have a good answer. Like I had one bad experience, and then I photographed that person again the next month and had a great experience. And what that taught me was, you never know what people are walking in with. Who knows what was going on that day. Not that gives anyone the right to treat anyone poorly, but it gives me some understanding that, what these people are, especially, some of these celebrity shoots that I do, I have them for minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's 1 or 2 minutes. You give an A-list celebrity, if I have 10 minutes, that is a treat. Yeah. Right. So
yeah, you feel like you have hours at that point.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that it's hard to judge someone by a couple minutes. They may be going through a divorce. They may have just gotten in a fight before they walked in the door. Who knows? And so I'm thankful to say, man, my bad experiences are so small, where it's why are we 3 hours here and still waiting for you to show up?
Yeah.
We got stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I used to shoot a lot for XXL magazine. And bro is always sitting around going, are you going to show up?
I actually had no idea that you'd ever shot for XXL, and that makes me so happy.
Oh, yeah,
that brings me such joy.
Yeah, so they're back in print now, I think, but it was whenever they were originally in print prior to them disappearing for a minute there. I would, between New Orleans and Atlanta, I'd shoot a good bit for them.
Talk to me about doing the Grammys the year that you did them, because inevitably that Grammys will kind of go down as being one of the best Grammys in recent memory, because it was the year that Billie Eilish just like cleaned up and stuff. And so talk to me about that, especially that was like immediately pre-COVID as well.
Oh, that was like one of the last things I did before we got locked down. And I'm pretty sure,
I wish I could remember what like date it was, because I'm gonna have to look it up. I only say because I can distinctly remember my last gig before COVID being March 14th. And then like right after that was like, just, it's a weird thing to remember. It's like,
I'd be willing to bet I came home with COVID from the Grammys. I got sick after that pretty good. And I mean, it's the Grammys. I shook hands with hundreds of people, and people from all over the world were flying in. So, and this is right before lockdown. So
it was January 26th. It was actually
January,
earlier
that's
than
right.
I thought it would be. Yeah.
So I actually believe that we ended up getting COVID from the Grammys. But yeah, man. So, it's, I can't talk about it without mentioning Danny Clinch, because Danny Clinch, another hero of mine, and an incredible photographer.
So good.
He basically created, I don't even know, he may have created just the way portrait studios are nowadays between the Grammys and Bonnaroo. I feel like he is one of the pioneers of that, and he built the Grammy studio to what it is. And he spent 16 years doing it. And, so many people can name so many iconic images from those 16 years. So I got the call in maybe as early as September. Hey, would you be up for shooting the Grammys in 2020? And I was like, what? And so I was like, they were like, it's between you and a couple people, but can we put your name in the hat? And say, yeah, sure. I swear to you, this is not me trying to be fake humble. I thought this is how it goes every year. This is going to be year 17 for Danny. He's always up against other people, and he gets it every year. That's what I assumed.
Yeah.
And so then maybe October, November came along, and they said, hey, it's down to you and one other person. What was my thought? Cool, it's between me and Danny, and this is where Danny gets it. That's just what I assumed happens every year. And then December comes along, and they say, you got it. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So we jump into, I had pitched some different creative options, and, we get into it. And next thing I know, we're flying out to LA. And I've been pretty good at this point. Come 2020, I'm fine. I'm not starstruck by celebrities anymore. Yeah. I'm calm on set. I don't really get super nervous. But dude, I'm telling you what, we set up. We loaded in, we set everything up, and I was a nervous wreck. And that night I couldn't sleep for anything. And I think
let's also not talk about the fact that like that was like Sonny's due date, right?
Yes. Okay. Okay. So yes, there's this other side of it.
That's like,
there's this other side of it where I originally was going to turn down the Grammys because it was if it wasn't on my wife's due date, it was within a week of my wife's due date for our second son.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I'm going to turn it down. Like I can't miss that.
Yeah.
And she said no. She pushed me to do the Grammy. She said no. Basically, like I feel in tune with my body right now, and he's not coming early.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, if you're going to push me to do this, I'll do it.
Which is also why I watched the Grammys at your house, was just in case, like that while you weren't there.
I mean, dude,
there were like options of ways for that to work out well.
I'm going like, who from Nashville is here? What artist here? Does Reba have her private jet here? Can I be like, hey, I need to bum a ride like ASAP to get back?
Yeah.
I was like pre-planning all that stuff. Where it was like, who has a PJ I can get on if I had to go back this night?
Yeah.
And but he did not come.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out perfectly.
Yeah, we had about a week to go. And so, that night before, man, I'm laying in bed, and I don't know if I ever really told many people this. I think I was really in my head because I have so much respect for Danny and what he did with that portrait studio, and it took me a while to realize that, as many iconic images as we know from that studio, and as many iconic images as he has, I finally that night realized, man, we're talking about a 16-year span, and it was one of those things where I had to kind of say to myself, like, okay, tomorrow, if you walk away with a handful of winners, something, honestly, a shoot like that, if you have one image that feels like it's like in that iconic world, right? Like this one's going to stick around, like that's a win. because it's hard to do. You're dealing with people for moments, right? Like a minute is a lot of time in those situations. So,
and they're in like wild emotional states.
Oh yeah.
Like that's different than like someone coming, even when you have, you know, again, I don't pretend to know, but like even when people are coming in for a shoot, like they are doing whatever, you know, people at that level can do to like center themselves like in that moment. Whereas these are a bunch of people who like are not expecting to, you know, especially someone in that year like Billy, who I think we all knew was going to do quite well, but like I genuinely don't think that she thought that she would like clean up, you know, like every major category.
Yeah. I mean, well, the good thing about those studios, especially when you're dealing with award shows, funny enough, Ryan Reynolds said it best. We were at the People's Choice Awards, I think maybe 2015, and we're in our little tent, and we were set up outside in a tent, and he comes, all of a sudden I look over, Ryan Reynolds walks in, and he looks at us, and he goes, you guys have the spot. He was like, no one comes in here upset. They just won. Yeah. Right. And so I was like, that's it. That's it. Everyone that we see is happy because they're walking in here after just winning an award. So that's the positive. But also no one really wants to take a picture like some people are crying, some people are celebrating with people, and last thing they want to do is stop and take a picture. So there's a weird balance there.
Sure.
So I had to calm myself down that night. And once I realized, okay, I'm putting way too much pressure on myself to get like, I felt like I was like, I need an iconic image of everyone that walks in. And once I kind of realized, okay, I don't have to do that. That's the goal. But, you know, if I walk away with a couple winners, that's the win. And so I finally fell asleep.
Yeah.
We got there early. There was also a little lighting thing that I just couldn't get out of my head. We got there early, fixed that. And then it starts. And what some people don't realize is there's kind of two parts to the Grammys, right? There's the pre-ceremony.
Whole pre-ceremony, like 80% of the awards happen up front. So, and performances and all kinds of shit now. Like it's a wild thing.
So it's a long day. It's 2 very long days. And you start shooting, you know, in the morning, and you're going to the Grammys wrap at night. And so you get a good stream of people coming in from the pre-show. And then when it wraps, you get a huge number of people, just a line of people coming that stuck around for the ceremony. Now they have their awards. They're going to come get their picture. And then you get a little break. The main event starts, and then kind of the same thing. They come flowing through, and then at the end, it's a little pop where everyone that didn't come directly after winning an award is now, or oftentimes, like Billy, for instance, they kept her around. Because if you're nominated for multiple things, you're going to wait till your last nomination is done before coming back.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so because they don't want to photograph with one award if you've won 3.
Sure.
They want to photograph you with 3. So they kind of get staggered like that. And so for Billy, like you said, she cleaned house. Dude, she came back. My goodness, I had never seen, it was amazing. Like to this day, I don't know if I've seen a picture with someone holding so many Grammys.
She's, I don't think she's tall enough to stand above all of those Grammys if they were stacked one on top of the other.
Dude, and then you have Phineas there. So you have her and Phineas in the same picture, both with literally, if you interlock your fingers and hold your hands where your palms are facing yourself, that's what we had her do. And we made this little cradle, and we filled her arms with Grammys, and we filled Phineas' arms with Grammys, and we started taking pictures. And when we went to Billy's solos, really when we wrapped, it was because her arms were just starting to shake. Because those Grammys they weigh a lot.
Yeah,
and I can't remember if it was 8. I mean, she had a lot of Grammys.
Yeah,
and so ridiculous. You could see her arms start to shake, and it was like, all right, let's wrap this up before you drop all these suckers. But man, I mean, talk about people that were just, it was so incredible to be in that moment with them, right? And it's such a beautiful relationship that they have as brother and sister, and to create that record together, and then to be there right in front of them as you see those emotions like coming out as they hold these Grammys. Like, again, like I said before, the pictures, I'm so glad for the pictures, but having those moments, like I shouldn't have been there.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I shouldn't have been with Billy and Phineas celebrating that. I was no part of that.
Right. Of course.
But I get put directly in front of them and get to witness such a beautiful moment. Like those are the things that I'm so thankful for with a career in photography, getting to see those moments, right? DJ Khaled won that year, dude.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
oh my gosh.
I feel like between the Billy one and the DJ Khaled one, those are the two most like memorable photos of that that whole like
Dude.
thing. And I mean, I saw tons of them right after, like you came back.
I mean, look, Billy and Phineas obviously were just over the moon about the win. No one had more fun at the Grammys than Khaled did. And he came back there, bro. You heard him coming down the hallway. He was the dude, and he just has such great energy too. Like, man, he's just so excited. He's such a kind person, and he just couldn't believe that he had just won this Grammy. And
especially after he had not won Grammys before.
Yeah.
Like, say what you will, each individual person about their feelings on DJ Khaled's music, and each individual person's feeling about the Grammys as like an institution and how it works and what people perceive as being how people politic their way into winning and stuff like that. But it's like, sometimes if you think of what is a good quality record and potentially the most popular thing in a category that DJ Khaled was nominated in, may or may not be a snub, in previous years. So that was like the first one, the DJ Khaled glass ceiling.
Yeah, man. And he was so stoked, and he at the studio there, he's like, here's my cell phone number. Like, I need these. And so if you follow him on Instagram, he posts a lot of pictures in his studio, and he has them printed on metal in his home and in his studio. And so it's him, the picture I took, you see it on Instagram all the time behind him. And dude, but for a period there was nothing I enjoyed more than getting voice memos from DJ Khaled, just talking about the pictures and what he wants to do with them. I need it for my houses and all this stuff.
The fact that he has multiple of the same photo, like for like multiple locations, is just the most precious thing.
Dude, I mean, I'm telling you, it was, and again, it's fun to see those artists really appreciate that, right? Like it sometimes it's easy to kind of get cynical and maybe think that they aren't legitimately excited about those things. Oh, another award. But man, seeing those people that just are just overjoyed, like it's the greatest moment of their life. It's such a neat thing to experience.
Yeah, I once was in an artist's house and was sitting on their sofa, like just hanging out, and looked over to the left and saw like the Grammys they had won to that point. But they're Grammys that I know that they weren't necessarily like proud of. And so it's like interesting that they're like way down on a shelf, and then they went on to win a boatload more. And then it's like, no, I think that those are probably in a better place. I think, like, I've seen things on like Architectural Digest and stuff being like, no, those are displayed better.
Exactly.
I think it can be either way, but I think that, there's so many of those stories about people who are like, yeah, like people put their Grammys in like the bathroom because like they just see it as like a nod or whatever.
Well, I feel like that's also being in Nashville. That's such a funny thing, right? Like, we're in a town that, how many Grammys are in this city?
Yeah.
I mean, how many people have multiples of those Grammys? So yeah, the amount of times I've been at a studio or some house and walk into a bathroom and there's a Grammy in there, it's just like, it's a trip. I mean, it's happened so many times.
I saw an Architectural Digest video. That's been like one of my like new things, is watching the Architectural Digest like home tours on YouTube. And they were going through John Batiste's house in New York, and he says that his wife just moves them around their house. He was like in the like the kitchenette for his studio, and he's like, oh, there's a Grammy there. And he was just like talking about how she'll just move them around so that he'll just see them randomly throughout the house.
My favorite thing, and I love John Batiste. Holy cow. I've been able to photograph him once, and, certainly being a Louisiana boy, like, what a talent, right?
Yeah.
And
was he super weird?
No, he was kind. We were shooting.
Well, I mean, I think he's kind, but every time I see him talk, he's kind of weird. Like, there's something going on that, like, he kind of has, like, whatever the thing is that makes him that creative, like that genius-y way, also just makes him just, like, talk randomly.
Well, we've kind of talked on this before, right? Where it's like people that reach that stratosphere of specialty in something, you kind of got to keep your brain empty of other things to be able to fill it with that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's, I mean, even photographers, there's so many famous photographers that got divorced 10 times and all this stuff. It's just because like the focus was right here and it had to stay right here, and everything else fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's just one of those guys that's probably just like, I gotta, all the brain power goes there.
Yeah. Because his output is just like prolific.
My favorite thing about that AD episode, though, is when his wife points out that the table is from Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, yes, dude, Facebook Marketplace is the bomb, and even the millionaires in New York are using it.
Okay, one more thing, and then we'll wrap up here. This isn't, I try not to be like super like topical or things like that. Or I guess I shouldn't say I try not to. I just really haven't had an opportunity to, but I think that this is like the time to go into something like this. So how are you feeling about AI? How often do you get asked this question, first of all?
You know, it becomes a topic here and there. When it comes to between me and my photo peers, I feel like I'm certainly on the end of the spectrum where I'm not quite as worried.
Sure.
You know, I think that there are areas within photography that are going to be in jeopardy here, in the same way that think of voice actors, right?
Oh, yeah.
Man alive, like they're basically taken out at this point. The AI stuff is just so easy and simple and cheap and all that. And I think that, you know, product photographers and car, automotive, there's certain things, certain career paths in photography that I think are more susceptible to what AI can do to damage their careers. I think that music, me being more specialized within music, it's not as dire a circumstance, right? Because I think and this is me, I'm the eternal optimist.
Sure,
so who knows? Don't listen
yeah.
to me. I could be dead wrong here. But I feel like an artist, if given the choice between, hey, you have this record coming out, we got your face, we could just create this AI thing and throw it up there, versus, hey, let's do this photo shoot and create this record cover. I think most artists, whether it's something that's romanticized, right, with old records and stuff that they grew up on, and now they're putting out records, they want the opportunity to do what their heroes did,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
They see that old Johnny Cash photo and they're like, that's sick, and that's inspiring to them. I like to think that given the choice, that AI just wouldn't float, right? That wouldn't be the choice that they go with. And so I hope that, those continued collaborations between artists and photographers stay strong, because I think that there is something that you can get out of that you can't with AI.
Yeah, I mean, that part for sure. I think that, like, especially with the uncertainty of it and things like that in different fields, I think that because you are a creative working with other creatives, like, you guys are kind of in like a symbiotic relationship about being like,
exactly,
like a bro code of like,
you're threatened, I'm threatened.
So like, let's not do that.
I'll sign the petition that says AI can't write music if you'll keep hiring me, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems like static image versus what I've heard come out of AI, like music, or like, I know some of like the filmy stuff is getting a little crazy and things like that. But I feel like static image, when people think of AI, like they are still mostly thinking of like, oh yeah, this image was created with AI. So I wasn't sure how that was like, shaping up in that kind of world for you.
I think whenever,
not necessarily for you, but just like in your sort of ecosystem.
I think whenever it first started popping off, was that last year before, there was a lot of worry. And again, there have been people that have been hurt by it already, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, this thing can't create someone with just 10 fingers. It's going to be 13. The hands are always messed up, or the teeth are jacked up. Like, and you're going like, okay, this thing isn't as smart at the moment as we thought it would be. So I think that's also something that kind of helped chill everyone out. But also there's really great tools with it. Man, the stuff in Photoshop you could do with AI now. Whenever I shoot pretty fast, and I move a lot. So I'm kind of always on the move, whether I shoot a lot on my 24-70, so whether that's using the different focal lengths or just bouncing all around. I'm up and down and everywhere. I'm constantly seeing a chiropractor because of that. And there have been moments where I have taken a picture and then I see it later. I'm like, man, if I only had half an inch more to the right. And then I started playing around. I honestly don't know where I fall with this in the end, but I've played around with it just to do it. And it's amazing to see what Photoshop and AI can do when you're like, all right, let me just add an inch to this side that I missed just to see what happens to the composition to make it better. And dude, it's dead on. It's so crazy. And I'm like, okay, that's useful.
Yeah. Have you seen that Instagram account where they take like album art and then broaden out the photo?
Yes.
Like to see what's out there. It's like, one, it's creepy what it comes up with sometimes. Like sometimes it'll be like way too weird. Other times it'll be like, yeah, that is what an Adele shoot would have looked like without just like 2 inches of her face, around each side. Also, it's like very good. Like the quality is like super
It's crazy.
good.
It's really smart. So, will it take over and put all of us out of business one day? Maybe.
Yeah.
But the artist in me goes, there's something important that's missing there. There's a story, each one of us, my pictures are the culmination of, I don't even know at this point, probably pushing 20 years of taking pictures and shooting and life experience. And, the way I took pictures 15 years ago, 10 years ago is different than the way I take pictures now. And I think that that's important. I think that there's refinement. I think that there's maturity in a lot of things that hopefully come through in the pictures that AI just can't do. And even if it can do it, the story's not there.
Yeah.
It's cheap.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can live through it. We'll see.
All right. Well, I'm releasing episodes bi-weekly. So this is going to be episode 5. I figure I started at the beginning of the year, so it's around 25 episodes a year. I'll have you back for episode 105.
Let's do that.
We'll see if you're poor and destitute. And
yeah, I think by 105, let's see, my goal for 105 is I'd like to photograph Mick Jagger by then. Let's do that. Mick Jagger and or Lil Wayne.
One of them has a higher life expectancy than the other. So you should probably do, do you know that like that's how Ken Burns works? Like when they start doing a major documentary, they do all the interviews first before they like construct a narrative, and they start with the oldest people first.
I'd say in the past 10 years, Lil Wayne's been closer to dying than Mick Jagger has, right? Like he had that one episode.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
fair.
It's 50-50.
All right, so yeah, it's a half and half. All right, well, we'll work on Mick Jagger and Lil Wayne. Well, thanks so much for being here. It was a great time.
Of course, anytime.
All right. All right, there you go. My thanks to Robby for coming on and hanging out with me for a while for episode 5. And to you, whether you've been here for 1 episode, 5 episodes, a couple, random ones that actually sound appealing to you and not some others, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all the support through the first handful of episodes of this podcast. Even though I say that 5 is an accomplishment, this is still a new endeavor, and so every subscription, like, follow, share, whatever you can do is super, super appreciated. By the way, this is random, but the audio of this show also has a YouTube page. All of the episodes are up to stream on YouTube. Sometimes that is the easiest way to share a podcast with someone. So if you're looking to share the show with somebody and you can't think of the RSS feed and that gets a little sticky, perhaps the best way that you can do that is by, looking at Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know on YouTube and sharing one of those videos with someone that you think would be interested. Earlier on, I mentioned the Instagram page for this show, which is at Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know. I am at Matt O'Donnell. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, recommendations, drop me an email, which is mattodonnellwantstoKnow@gmail.com. What do you say we do 5 more of these and celebrate something else when we get to 10 episodes again, huh? However, that's going to do it for today. So, take care of yourself, and remember, the best answer to a question is usually another question. See ya!